Thanks for joining us today. Sorry, I'll just click on this one. There we go. Okay, just a quick overview of the presentation. So it's been a big year for mosquito-borne diseases in the north of WA. So we've done a lot of enhanced surveillance for mosquito-borne diseases in the north, particularly, but also down south as well. So we'll cover Murray Valley encephalitis virus, Kunjun virus, and Japanese encephalitis virus activity in WA in the 2022-23 financial year. The detection of JV in WA for the first time, clinical disease symptoms of JE, Japanese encephalitis, and the transmission cycle of that disease. We also cover Department of Health's response to Japanese encephalitis, and we'll look at how we're going to, with the appearance of this new virus, mosquito-borne virus, how we're going to do plague virus surveillance into the future. So historically, the last 3 years have had strong La Ninas, and this is a map from the Bureau of Meteorology showing the sort of weather. You get a lot of rainfall in the north and down the southeast of Australia. Not so much of an impact in the southwest of WA, but all that rain for several years leads to good mosquito disease years. So a lot of bird breeding, but also ideal conditions for mosquitoes to breed up. So La Nina in the north of WA has increased rainfall, warmer overnight temperatures, earlier monsoon onset, so the wet season goes for longer, and greater cyclone numbers generally. We haven't seen that this year, but there have been a couple of big cyclones as well as big lows that have sat over Kimberley and dumping a lot of rain. And historically, that's sort of La Nina seasons associated with increased flavivirus activity in the northern WA. So here's a graph. The top graph is of Murray Valley encephalitis cases historically, and they line up fairly well. So this year, actually, we've had now up to 6 cases of Murray Valley encephalitis in WA, all thought to have been acquired in the Kimberley. Unfortunately, there's been 2 of those people have died, and at least one of those people has got is still sort of has some sort of neurological issues. You can see that back in there was big La Nina years in 2010 and 11, and back in 2000 as well, and we've seen those big peaks of Murray Valley encephalitis cases. 1993 was also a big year for Murray Valley encephalitis. Wasn't a particularly La Nina year, but I think what happened there was some La Ninas earlier, a couple of years earlier, and then La Nina, so so dry weather in the southeast, and then a good wet season in the Kimberley. So probably a migration of birds back to the Kimberley, bringing virus with them. So we definitely see a very strong trend with big La Nina seasons for Murray Valley encephalitis disease in the north. The bottom graphs is just showing Murray Valley encephalitis and Kunjun virus. So there's Kunjun's less commonly diagnosed, but some years it does appear to significant disease for some people. The flaviviruses which cause human disease in WA, so Murray Valley encephalitis and Kunjun virus, so they're 2 endemic viruses that have always been in the Kimberley, particularly, sometimes get down into the Pilbara. There's a whole heap of other flaviviruses such as Edge Hill and Stratford and Cockleboro and Alfoy, which rarely cause human disease. However, we commonly get them in our mosquitoes and sometimes in our sentinel chickens from our work up there. And those diseases are not diagnosed regularly because their symptoms are quite mild generally, although they can take several months for people to recover. Japanese encephalitis virus is new to WA and mainland Australia. It's been present in the Torres Strait since the 1990s, but never down mainland. So 2022 it was found out in the southeast of Australia, and was not detected in the WA in 2022. There's been no human cases of Japanese encephalitis virus detected in WA yet. So Japanese encephalitis is, around the world is particularly in Southeast Asia is where it's evolved and spread from. And see, this map's a bit old now, but it's shows the southeast of Australia, the extension, if you like, into the southeast of Australia. And of course now it's been found in the NT as well as in the Kimberley and the Pilbara. Interestingly, the World Health Organization say the spread of Japanese encephalitis virus is strongly associated with new areas of agricultural development and intensive rice cultivation or irrigated agriculture. So it's a particular concern for us with the increase in irrigated agriculture in the Kimberley, but also across the north, the big push for food security for increased agriculture in the north. So just a bit of background on Japanese encephalitis. So the virus, it's a flavivirus, related to Murray Valley encephalitis and Kunjun virus. Used to be considered exotic to mainland Australia, and is the primary cause of viral encephalitis in many Asian countries. The symptoms are rare, 1 in 100 people, but can be severe and even fatal. And it's one of the differences between Murray Valley encephalitis, which has been here forever. It's closely related to Japanese encephalitis, but the symptoms are similar. But in Murray Valley encephalitis, 1 in 1,000 people get the disease when they're infected with the virus from a mosquito bite. But with Japanese encephalitis, it's 1 in 100. So it's so much more likely to cause disease in people. So it's a bigger problem, if you like, for us ongoing, and can be fatal as well. So there's no cure or treatment, just like Murray Valley encephalitis. Treatment is based on symptoms. However, the other difference is with Japanese encephalitis is that there's an effective vaccine available, and that vaccine's been around for 30 odd years. So it's a really tried and tested and safe vaccine. The disease symptoms, and which are very similar to Murray Valley encephalitis, characterised by high fever, vomiting, neck stiffness, disorientation, coma, seizures, paralysis, and potentially death. Obviously, it's encephalitis, so it's inflammation of the brain, so it causes lots of issues. So case fatality rate 30%, and roughly 30% suffer permanent neurological consequences. So it's not a great disease to get. And so Japanese encephalitis is vaccination is a good thing to get if you're into vaccines. So it's the transmission cycle of Japanese encephalitis is the natural cycle, if you like, is between water birds and mosquitoes. So freshwater mosquitoes, particularly the Culex species, so the cycle is sustained, if you like, between mosquitoes and water birds. Then we get pigs, horses and humans as sort of incidental hosts, if you like. The big difference with Japanese encephalitis is that pigs are what are called an amplifying host, so they get a lot of virus in their blood. So when mosquitoes bite those pigs, then they can move the virus onto other hosts. Horses and humans being dead end hosts, so we don't, and chickens as well, don't get enough virus in the blood, if you like, from a mosquito to bite you and then be able to move the disease on. So The pigs are a very important part of this Japanese encephalitis virus transmission cycle. So the main host in Australia is regarded as being Culex anorostris. In Southeast Asia, there's a similar species called Culex tritanorhynchus, and I'll talk about that a bit more in a minute. And in the temperate areas of Asia, JV is transmitted mainly during the warmer season. So that's what we saw in the southeast of Australia, was that associated with summer rainfall, increased rain, warmer weather. It's the mosquito Culex anorostris doesn't like the cold weather, so it's a sort of more of a summer, wet summer type mosquito vector in the south of the country, but in the north it's there all year round. So and it's the same in Southeast Asia, where they're vectors in the tropics and subtropics. You get transmission all year. So the vectors are around. In the eastern states, so March 2022, JV was declared communicable disease incident of national significance, and the only previous time they'd done that was with COVID, so it was regarded as being highly significant disease. So lots of piggeries in South Australia, Victoria, Queensland and New South Wales reported Japanese encephalitis. So within the piggeries, the effect on pigs is mainly on pregnant sows, where you get stillbirths, mummified fetuses, neurological issues in piglets, and reduced fertility in boars. I've read at some stage that there's been a huge up to 25% productivity loss in some of those piggeries that had Japanese encephalitis. So for the pig industry, it's a big deal, as well as for the people that work in those industries as well, because they're potentially exposed. In the east, there's 45 confirmed cases or probable cases, and 7 deaths. In the Northern Territory, there was some surveillance that was done up there of feral pigs. Found a lot of feral pigs had, even though they hadn't found the disease in mosquitoes, that the feral pigs close to the WA border had Japanese encephalitis. So we thought that it was most likely that would also be in the Kimberley, but we hadn't detected it. So there was also confirmed Japanese encephalitis virus in pigs in the eastern states during this year as well. So in WA, we've now detected prior exposure to JV in feral pigs and central chickens. So 2 feral pigs in northern Kimberley were actually sampled in October 2022, but it was in a remote station and they didn't get the samples down to the lab until February, late January, and then the tests were confirmed in February 23. So that was the first actual detection of JV, Japanese encephalitis virus in WA. And then subsequently the sentinel chickens in the Kimberley at Kununurra and Wyndham, then Halls Creek, also found to have had prior exposure to Japanese encephalitis virus, and also 1 chicken in Newman as well. For Japanese encephalitis virus diagnosis in an animal, it has to be declared by the Chief Veterinary Officer of DPID, Department of Primary and Regional Development, under the BAM Act. The important thing to note here is that there's been no detection of Japanese encephalitis virus in pigs, in commercial pigs in the southwest of WA. So because of the emergence of Japanese encephalitis virus in the east, and we thought it was going to be here, but also compounded with that was that third La Nina year, and we know there's a very active flavivirus year. So we did some a lot of enhanced surveillance in the Kimberley and around the whole state, indeed, looking at mosquito surveillance, central chicken surveillance and feral pig surveillance. So our initial goal was to detect that if it was present in WA, or if it was still absent. So we thought it would be in the Kimberley, and that obviously was proved correct. So the Sentinel chicken surveillance, we've got in all these different towns here, we've got 22 Sentinel flocks that we've had for 40 odd years for as an early warning system for Murray Valley encephalitis and Kunjun virus, and we've also using them obviously for Japanese encephalitis virus detections as well. It's been an unprecedented flavivirus year for us across the state, particularly in the Kimberley and into the Pilbara, where there's been so many of our Sentinel chickens have become positive for flaviviruses, either Murray Valley encephalitis, Kunjun virus, or Japanese encephalitis virus. So it's been hugely active. So it's all the normally in our flock we have 12 chickens in a flock, and sometimes you might get 1 or 3 or 4 or 5 of those chickens might become positive for flaviviruses. But this year, every chicken, every flock in the Kimberley has become positive, and same in some of the flocks around Karratha, Port Hedland. There's been a really high rate of positivity, if you like, in the chickens. So we've got those 4 flocks that are positive, and then we had a flavivirus sample from York, which got us excited because flavivirus could be Murray Valley encephalitis, Japanese encephalitis, or Kunjun, and we're particularly worried about Japanese encephalitis because all the commercial piggeries are in the southwest of WA. But testing has just left it as a determinable flavivirus. So in response to that, we did a whole heap of testing of domestic flocks in the southwest. This map will show you. So that the green, I think, of the where there's been chickens tested for Japanese encephalitis and Murray Valley encephalitis. So we did a whole heap of chickens around the southwest, as well as up in the goldfields, and a few extras up in the far Kimberley. And fortunately, we haven't found any more flavivirus activity in the southwest, so that's really reassuring to do that extra bleeding. Mosquito surveillance. Traditionally, in the north, we do an annual 3 to 4 week survey of the Pilbara and the Kimberley. That's sort of almost like a historical look at what activities occurred that year, because it takes us most of the year traditionally to process those mosquitoes. So there are 2 offices based in East Kimberley, hosted by the Shire of Kimberley. So we were up there from basically late November, and just got back on Friday. With mosquito surveillance, no JAV has been detected to date in the mosquitoes we've sampled, and that's a low rate of JAV in mosquitoes being found throughout Australia as well, even over east when they're having the big outbreaks in piggeries and along the Murray River. They had only a few pools of mosquitoes were found with Japanese encephalitis. So we're not entirely sure whether it's something to do with how we store the mosquitoes, or whether we're just not detecting the correct species of mosquitoes or the correct stage of the mosquito. And it may be that we missed the key months, but we think we would pick it up in the mosquitoes if there was doing the right thing. Big floods in Fitzroy Crossing, around Fitzroy Crossing. You see that photo of the mosquito trap on the right. That was February down at Fitzroy Crossing. There are thousands of mosquitoes, so many mosquitoes in that area. Most of them are potential vectors for Japanese encephalitis or Murray Valley encephalitis and Kunjun. We've also detected Culex tritanorinchus. So This is a significant thing. It was first detected in the Northern Territory in Australia in 2019. Prior to that, it hadn't been recognised as being in Australia. This is a very small mosquito. It's a primary Japanese encephalitis virus vector in Southeast Asia. And we detected it in low levels, which is the same as occurred in the Northern Territory. But there's widespread Japanese encephalitis virus activity throughout the region. So it may be that our traps are not trapping Culex tritaniorhynchus at large enough numbers for us to detect. That mosquito hasn't been found anywhere else, only in the Northern Territory and in the East Kimberley. But it's likely to continue to spread, but it really likes the wet conditions that you'll get around irrigated agricultural. So this is where we've done some of the mosquito surveillance. So lots of surveillance up around the East Kimberley. We were a bit hampered. We'd hoped as part of the project do a lot more on the West Kimberley, but obviously the bridge at Fitzroy Crossing was washed away, so we weren't able to get across there early. Our team, we were lucky that because we went up in December, our vehicle and all our equipment were based in Kununurra already. We did send a team up in March to do the traditional sort of northern surveillance, and they covered the Pilbara and some of the West Kimberley as well. But subsequently, once the bridge opened at Fitzroy Crossing, or the low-level crossing, then we've been able to do a bit more surveillance in West Kimberley. We've also managed just to get up to Clumberoo a couple of weeks ago, do some surveillance up there. So the results of some of these mosquito sampling haven't been finalised yet. With our work in the East Kimberley, we've done multiple trappings over several at many locations. But at several locations we've trapped sort of every couple of weeks so that we can get a good idea of the changes of mosquito species, abundance, as well as which species are present, and what sort of viruses we found. So although we haven't found Japanese encephalitis virus in our mosquitoes, we've found widespread activity, Murray Valley encephalitis and Kunjun virus and Ross River virus in the Kimberley in our mosquitoes. So it's been very interesting from that perspective, and as well as that sort of activity over a long period of time. In the southwest, our traditional surveillance in the southwest of WA has been for Ross River virus and Barmah forest, and along the Swan Coastal Plain, basically from Mandurah to Dunsborough, where you get a high level. So that surveillance is targeting salt marsh mosquitoes, Culex, Aedes camptorhynchus, and which is not a vector of Japanese encephalitis. So we've changed some of our sites, but we continue to do our Ross River virus sampling, but we've added additional sites and are testing some of the sites in our existing surveillance system that are near freshwater habitat for Japanese encephalitis virus. And we've also done a lot of surveillance around piggeries, basically from Geraldton to Esperance, piggeries as well as wetlands in the southwest. So there's been a lot of really good information we've gathered from that. And as well as that, we've worked with the pig industry as well. So, to prepare the pig industry for if Japanese encephalitis was detected, then there's a whole heap of the piggeries need to do a whole heap of mosquito control to potentially stop virus getting into their piggeries. So we've had one surveillance officer who's basically been working in the southwest, working out where all the piggeries are, and everyone that we've been in contact with has been happy to be involved because they're obviously concerned for their industry, having seen what happened over east when Japanese encephalitis was detected there. So fortunately, we haven't detected it in pigs or mosquitoes in the southwest or chickens, so it doesn't appear to be here. And here's a map. The red dots are where where surveillance, extra surveillance, so normally our surveillance is just down the coastals here, but done extra surveillance throughout the state, southwest of the state, for looking for Japanese encephalitis, as well as looking for host vector mosquito species. And so it's been a big, extensive program of surveillance, and we haven't found it, which has been great. The other thing we did was set up a feral pig surveillance program, because pigs are the most sensitive sentinel for Japanese encephalitis virus. So that was set up in October 22, and fortunately the guy up in the North Kimberley came on board straight away and collected some pig samples up there. So there's been pig samples collected throughout the state, and we get a tonsil and blood sample. So the photo on the bottom right is of a pig tonsil, which are a little bit hard to get to, but tonsils are wonderful for showing active virus infection. Blood samples are great for showing antibodies. So blood shows prior exposure to a disease, and the tonsils can show current infection with the disease. So that's why we get both. So the two feral pig samples from the North Kimberley provided the first evidence of Japanese encephalitis activity in WA. We've also been collaborating with the Northern Australian Quarantine Strategy, which is a Commonwealth Department of Agriculture program, and they do surveillance for exotic pests and diseases across the north of the country. And we've co-funded some surveys along the Fitzroy River and out to Fitzroy River and its sort of tributaries out almost to Halls Creek along this there. And they've also just recently done some surveillance in the North Kimberley, and from the border, if you like, to the North Kimberley. They also have done surveillance in the NT. The most recent stuff they've done we haven't got the results for that yet. We're always looking to expand feral pig surveillance. So if you know anyone that's feral pigs. So the yellow triangles on this map are where we've got samples from. So if you're up around Northampton, Geraldton Way, out around 2J out in the Avon Valley there, one up, I think that's up Mill Stream, and then along the Fitzroy River where we did the survey with the NARCS program, and then a backyard operator up around Halls Creek recently. These have all been negative. The positive ones were up here in the North Kimberley. So yeah, that'll be an ongoing program because it is so sensitive to infection. So part of our response to JEV has been standing up an IMT, so an incident management team. So that has incident management team, which was part of the Environmental Health Department, communicable diseases within WA Health, the Kimberley Public Health Unit, other health units, Department of Primary Industry and Regional Development, all as part of a One Health type of approach where we looking at animal and human health as one. So that meeting, that committee was an overarching committee, if you like, that met regularly early on to work out how we respond. We also had a VMRT, which is a Vector Management Response Team within environmental health, and we also on that had local government, environmental health providers, and public health units as well. So a lot of that work was liaising with local governments and other stakeholders to implement mosquito management in areas where Japanese encephalitis had been detected, a vaccination rollout in the Kimberley and the Pilbara, communications and media releases, and facilitating cultural control measures. So the vaccination, one of the things the Japanese encephalitis virus vaccination is that there's a lot of people in Southeast Asia where the vaccine production is done annually, if you like, predicted annually. So when it came to Australia, wanting a whole lot of vaccinations, we had to wait 12 months effectively before we get enough to start vaccinating the at-risk groups that we wanted to vaccinate. So the actual occupational risk groups were eligible, so people like environmental health officers and others in the Kimberley and the Pilbara that work closely in mosquito management, as well as a few other people. It's on the WA Health website who's eligible. In the eastern states, the at-risk groups were different because they had piggeries and people that work in piggeries and that sort of stuff were at-risk groups, but we don't have that here because it hasn't been found where we've got piggeries. So the free JV vaccine program is rolled out to the at-risk communities in the Kimberley and some in the Pilbara. And there's a JV expert vaccination group, and they need to determine the priorities, if you like, of guests that get vaccinated. The risk communication. So we've put out at least 8 mosquito-borne disease-related media statements this year. We've also done a lot of talks on local radio and interviews with local newspapers in the Kimberley and the Pilbara. We've had lots of meetings with feral pig groups and community school groups, pig industry as well. And lots of talking. There's also a JV stakeholder toolkit available on our website as well for people to get information on JV. And as well as there's been some new program, if you like, of sort of information. So some of these stay JV free type things. Some of them are just doing the traditional fight the bite type messaging where you cover up, repel and clean up. And some have added the vaccine as well as an option because, you know, you still need to, even if you've been vaccinated, you obviously you still need to take care of yourself. So it's a really important message. And that message is also important for Murray Valley encephalitis and Kunjun virus and Rossrum virus. The same message is you still need to do that for those things as well. Some of the advice has also been put into Creole and other languages in the Kimberley to target the Aboriginal communities that are regarded as being highest at-risk group. Cultural control methods. We've supplied bed nets and repellents to local governments and Aboriginal environmental health service providers, and those people that work in those areas are able to identify the most at-risk communities, but we're particularly worried about babies and old people are the most susceptible to these viral infections, and bed nets are a really good way of stopping getting in contact with those things. The other big message we've had this year is the importance of reducing harbourage habitat for mosquitoes around housing and community areas. So, particularly in the wet season, is a real big problem in the Kimberley and the Pilbara. It gets rain, but if of a lot of long grass around houses, and that allows mosquitoes to stay there, live for longer, and live and stay close to where people are. So getting rid of the long grass is a big push as well. Now, try and reduce the life of the mosquito. So the mosquito needs to live for a long time for it to be able to spread the virus after it's bitten an infected host. So if you can shorten the length of time that a mosquito lives for, then that reduces the risk of it passing on the disease. Future flavivirus surveillance. So we've just got funding for a further 12 months enhanced flavivirus surveillance. So that's a really good thing. So the plan at the moment is to be based in East Kimberley because that's the area with the greatest flavivirus activity in WA, and it's sort of endemic. So it's always always up there, whereas like in the Pilbara it's not there every year, and certainly in the southwest it's not there. We'll still be doing work throughout the whole of the state and work in the southwest as well, but the focus for our research part of the program, if you like, and will be in the East Kimberley, and we really need to research and refine methods for the ongoing surveillance of flaviviruses. So we need to, the old system, if you like, for Murray Valley encephalitis needs to be, in Kunjun virus needs to be adapted to take into account Japanese encephalitis virus surveillance, and mosquitoes. You know, we need to do a lot of research into why mosquitoes aren't showing up the virus, but we'll obviously keep using our sentinel chickens plots. Will be our primary surveillance tool. So we'll look at things like FTA cards, which FTA stands for Flinders Technologies Associates. So those cards can collect and transport and like RNA at room temperature. So the SMAC trap, which is on the right hand side, so the mosquitoes bite. You know, we put some like a honey and water solution on the cards, which the cards are on the left hand, just like a bit of paper, and the mosquitoes bite those bits of paper, if you like, and leave a bit of their RNA behind, showing from their saliva, and that's really important for us to, you know, because it can be transported at normal temperatures, at room temperature. One of the big limiting factors with our surveillance is in the north with mosquitoes anyway, is that the mosquitoes currently need to be kept at minus 80 degrees from point of collection until they get to the lab for testing to preserve the virus. So we've trialled these SMAC traps in the past, but we weren't happy with the results we were getting. We're looking at them as being potential sentinel chicken replacement, but they're using them in Queensland now. So we'll do some trials on them again, and with a few improvements. We also want to research into mosquito species and how we can trap the main vectors, and transport media is another thing we've looked at before, is some sort of media which we can put mosquitoes or samples into that can be sent at room temperature and will still preserve the virus. The other, and any other options that we come across, so there's this big meeting in a couple of months in Queensland of all mosquito people who will be talking about all things Japanese encephalitis and flavivirus surveillance, and so look at what they're doing and how they're what we can do. You know, whether we use some other sort of sentinel animal. We don't want to go down looking at sentinel pigs, which they did in the Torres Strait years ago. It was very expensive, and they go positive for flaviviruses really quickly. But sort of increasing the feral pig surveillance will be a thing that we want to do as well. We may look at different types of mosquito traps, but it's an exciting time, if you like, for flavivirus surveillance, and obviously the ultimate aim is to reduce disease risk in humans, as well as protect industry as well. That's it. So if you've got questions or information, you can contact medical entomology. Yeah, good. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Craig. That was really informative. As I said, we had a couple of questions that came through prior to the session, so we'll just go through some of these. So how are the other states actually dealing with their surveillance programs for JEV?
Yeah, there's some of them still use sentinel chickens. All of them have been doing mosquito surveillance, which is why we know that mosquito surveillance hasn't been very effective. Some of the Queensland's using the SMAC trap, which They haven't detected Japanese encephalitis in that this year. They've detected Murray Valley encephalitis and Clinton virus, just like we have in mosquitoes, but they haven't detected that in the trap. And they do, because it's been down in the commercial pig area, their departments of agriculture are doing surveillance of piggeries, using blood from piggeries, blood samples from piggeries to see if the virus is active. In the Northern Territory, they're doing feral pig surveys. So that's about it. Yeah, it's still evolving. What the best sort of system will be, I guess.
And so you're working closely with the other states on their program?
Yes, we've been talking with the other states, and at this conference it'll be really great to work even closer with them. There is a group called the National Arbovirus Area Committee, and they've got representatives from each state, and they meet every month or two to discuss surveillance and disease. So there's a national group that sort of tries to coordinate all the ideas of how we undertake surveillance.
Okay. So we continue to use these centennial chickens for early warning, and will you expand the number of flocks that we have in WA?
We will definitely continue using centennial chickens. We will continue to do the ad hoc chicken flocks around the southwest in particular to see if there's any virus in the southwest. And we'll probably we're looking at re-establishing a flock in the goldfields and maybe one around Geraldton as well, and maybe a couple more in some of the communities in the Kimberley as well.
Okay, and why do you think Japanese encephalitis hasn't been detected in southern WA yet, but it has been detected in South Australia and Victoria?
Yeah, I guess I guess the difference is that we've the theory is that the disease got into the southwest because there's a water bird flyway from PNG down the east coast down to the Murray River, which is obviously the border to all those states, and so the theory is those birds brought the disease down from the north, and then that corresponded with good wet seasons and good mosquito breeding in summer. We don't have that sort of flight path, if you like, of wader birds from the north of the Kimberley where they're from over east to WA because of the desert circus. So we think that there's not enough virus coming to the southwest with birds that do come down. As well, we haven't had the summer rain, which would lead to the big populations of Culex and Nororostris, the vector mosquito, which is a real summer mosquito here. So we've been lucky with seasonal conditions, I guess, but ultimately we still need to be looking out for it, because if it can occur in those southern climates, then it could occur here as well, given the right environmental conditions.
Well, hopefully it never makes its way down south, but it's great to know that you're monitoring it just in case.
Yeah.
And I just thought I would ask myself, so you've been spending a lot of time out of the office across the state. Have you been enjoying getting out and about, particularly up north?
Well, yes. I mean, it's how do you say no? I mean, I lived in the Kimberley for 22 years, so I really love the Kimberley environment. And doing this is sort of a once in a generation opportunity to do field surveillance for mosquito disease. So it's a really the last time any sort of intensive surveillance almost was done in the Kimberley was 70 years ago. So it's a real it's really amazing to be actually doing that sort of work. So yeah, it's been a hard, we've sort of been doing month on month off sort of swapping. So it's been hard hard work in a lot of ways, but it's been really rewarding sort of work as well.
Yeah, okay. So what would be a typical day out on the field? and perhaps an experience that you weren't expecting, like wild animals that you came across?
Well, there's probably no typical day because we're very responsive. So, you know, when we first went back up to Kununurra, we were planning to do surveillance around Kununurra, and then they said, "Oh, how they get Fitzroy Crossing?" So then we head off to Fitzroy Crossing, and do mosquito surveillance there. So a typical day, I guess, is afternoon. You set the mosquito traps at a location that you're at. In the morning, you pick them up. So you set them late afternoon, pick them up on dawn the next day. So dawn in Kununurra in December is about 4:30 because it's so far east. So you end up having a sort of like a bit of a siesta in the middle of the day. So that's the mosquito surveillance. We're also doing bleeding sentinel chickens up there, helping local government, talking to local government in the middle of the day, talking to communities, there's, I guess, the pigs at Halls Creek. You know, I've got a phone call on Friday afternoon saying we know someone that's slaughtering some their backyard pigs tomorrow. Do you want to come down and get the sample? So, you know, it was sort of very responsive. So we go down, you know, take the tonsils out and get the blood sample. So it's a very diverse sort of role.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So you were saying you were trying to get, you know, if people were aware of people that were wild pig hunters and the likes to get in contact with you, and you'd be keen to connect with them to.
Yeah, that's right.
So have you had a good response in terms of that,
from some groups? So yeah, we've worked in the southwest with the biosecurity groups that have that do the sort of coordinate the feral pig sort of work, and same in the Kimberley. We're still establishing more and more networks. So I know there's people around Kununurra that have got pigs and people around Broome as well. So it's been a wonderful opportunity to develop a whole heap of networks in the Kimberley, as well as get out to a whole heap of communities to work with communities within mosquito management.
Yeah, and I know you said were you on site around the Fitzroy Crossing flooding, and you had to help out with a lot of the communications up there and just educate people about mosquito protection and the likes? Yeah,
that's right. It was good to get there and work with particularly the Derby environmental health team, as well as other people that came in, other environmental health people that came in the Aboriginal environmental health groups. Worked with those groups, look around the town and identify at-risk sites with those people, and sort of work out control strategies so that people reduce the risk of people getting bitten by mosquitoes.
Yeah. And you were saying that you work with the local government environmental health officers. So do they actually come out on site and go and do the surveillance with you, or? Well,
sometimes, it's a real, so they do some of their own surveillance and we might help them, or they will come. So we've had a lot of good interactions with all the local governments in the East Kimberley and the Halls Creek, Derby, West Kimberley and Broome as well. So it's been particularly those areas in the Kimberley that we've worked with that had really good interactions with those, as well as the environmental health providers like Nirrumbuk and Nindalangari, Fitzroy Crossing, and other groups as well. So it's been really wonderful sort of collaborative work, if you like.
Yeah, okay. All right, well, I think that's most of our questions there. I